This film features cold weapon battle scenes rarely seen in the entire history of cinema. It tells the story of a real historical campaign in Scotland where Robert I led 500 ragtag soldiers to defeat 3,000 English armored heavy cavalry against all odds, thereby opening the most brilliant and legendary chapter in the history of Scottish independence. Many netizens hail this film as the sequel to Braveheart, but compared to the former, this movie is closer to real history, restoring the tumultuous uprising process of Robert I. He does not shout freedom like William Wallace, nor does he have overly idealistic, lofty ambitions. He is merely a powerful noble who understands how to assess the situation, a formidable leader of his generation who possesses deep wisdom and knows how to endure. The story is set in 1304. At that time, Scotland suffered a tragic blow when King Alexander III passed away suddenly without leaving any heirs to inherit the throne. A group of Scottish lords invited King Edward I of England to enter Scotland to act as an arbitrator to select the heir. The result of this action was that Edward I claimed Scotland for himself and vigorously implemented his own tyrannical rule of gathering wealth. Under this tyranny, the Scots rose up to resist under the leadership of William Wallace, but they helplessly ended in a crushing defeat. Thereafter, a group of Scottish nobles surrendered one after another, and Edward I also occupied the last castle in Scotland. At the surrender ceremony, Edward I accepted the oaths of allegiance from the nobles. After the ceremony, he called Robert Bruce and John Comyn before him. These two were the most qualified among the nobles to inherit the throne, but Edward I did not give the crown to either of them. To show that he arranged for his crony Valence, the governor of Scotland, essentially puppet for his continued, and ordered Robert and Comyn to obey Valence's leadership and bury the hatchet. After the ceremony, a destitute lord named James Douglas petitions King Edward I. His father had followed William Wallace in the uprising, was captured after the defeat, and died miserable in prison. Now he hopes to return his family's ruthlessly rejected doubt. This man is none other than Robert's future most fierce general, known to the world as the Black Douglas. Then, the English king gathers everyone outside to show off his siege artifact. This sterling castle is the last bastion of the Scottish defense line. The castellan inside surrendered 2 days ago, but the English king did not accept it. His goal is to intimidate the assembled nobles with this new weapon. As soldiers light the projectile on the trebuchet, the demon in the hearts of the Scots cuts the rope holding the mechanism with one sword stroke. The huge projectile flies toward the distant castle with monstrous flames, burning the last bit of Scottish resistance to ashes. After it ends, Edward I walks carelessly to Robert and praises his wisdom in choosing to submit, while Robert remains silent. Those words of praise feel like the flames rising on the distant city walls at this moment, burning and roasting his originally firm and confident heart. He should have been crowned King of Scotland, so naturally he is unwilling to be reduced to a chess piece on someone else's board. On the way back, his father tells Robert that he believes once the situation stabilizes, the English king will let him sit on the Scottish throne, which is also why he advised his son not to continue resisting. After he dies, the throne will logically become Robert's. Robert holds a different view from his father. He thinks that even if he becomes king this way, he will merely be a servant to the English king. But his father's orders are hard to disobey, so he can only choose to comply. Meanwhile, in Scotland, where the resistance has failed, the people's lives are struggling under the English king's intensified taxation. Furthermore, to make up for the troops lost in suppressing the rebellion, the English king forcibly conscripts soldiers from Scotland. This puzzles the lower-class people who thought submission meant no more fighting. The doubts voiced by the public make Robert feel quite helpless, and the English soldiers coming to conscript do not even spare underage children.
I know for a he prefers to command men, not children.
When Robert doesn't know what to do, Elizabeth stands up beside him. She is Robert's wife through political marriage, a method used by Edward I to control Scotland, but seeing the suffering of the exploited people here, she chooses to support Robert from now on. Shortly after, Robert's father becomes terminally ill. On his deathbed, he confesses to his son that Edward I is no longer a friend worthy of admiration. Blindly compromising with him will only put the Scots in deeper water and hotter fire. He seems to have made a wrong decision. Robert's father passes away the next day. His father's dying words once again strengthen his desire to make Scotland independent. And after the funeral, when he goes to the border to hand over the collected taxes to the English king, he sees that he is not the only one who wants independence. In the town of Berwick, on the border of the two countries, a squad of English cavalry drives a carriage into the square, instantly silencing the originally lively town. Robert, having just paid the taxes, sees the people gathering toward the square. Walking up, he discovers it is William Wallace, who was executed by dismemberment by the English. His corpse has been separated and sent to various cities to be hung for public display, and a part of it was sent here. Seeing the national hero suffer such an inhumane fate, the people's angry emotions are completely ignited. They gather together to protest against the soldiers, and the situation instantly spirals out of control. The chaos before his eyes clears the fog for Robert. He realizes that he is not the only one who has never given up on resistance. The national integrity still echoes on the land of Scotland, and the backbone of the people has never been bent. The flame of resistance deep in his heart is ignited once again. He immediately returns home and reveals his plan to fight England to his brothers. The brothers, who previously could only endure due to their father's decision, hit it off instantly. To expand the uprising team, he meets his old rival John Comyn at a church, hoping he will fight England together with him and strive for national independence. But Comyn thinks they have already failed once, and the people need to rest and recuperate just after the war. He does not agree to join, and even threatens to report this news to King Edward I. As long as Robert is executed by Edward I for rebellion, the throne will logically become his. Threatened, Robert stabs Comyn to death almost as a conditioned reflex, but after reacting, he also knows he has committed a major taboo. The 13th century in Europe was the peak era of the church. Even Robert, who harbors a heart for restoring the country, is panicked after killing someone in a church. He goes to the church to actively confess his crime. After discussion, the bishops not only decide to absolve him, but also agree to support him being crowned as king on the premise that Robert must swear allegiance to the church. Killing Comyn in the Holy Ground also leads to mixed opinions among the nobles regarding Robert's impending kingship. He only receives half the support, planting the root of trouble for his subsequent displaced struggle. On the march to the coronation, Robert meets the lone Douglas. He kneels on one knee, wishing to pledge loyalty to Robert, with the goal of defeating the English and taking back his family's territory. Robert readily agrees. In 1306, Robert is crowned king on the Stone of Scone, known in history as Robert I. This news soon reaches the English. Edward I is furious and issues a decree declaring Robert an outlaw. Anyone who meets him can execute him directly without trial. Under the bitter pleading of the prince, he sends his son to Scotland to suppress the rebellion. However, after being crowned, Robert encounters Valence before the English army even arrives in Scotland. The John Comyn stabbed to death by Robert was his brother-in-law. He is sworn enemies with Robert, eager to fight a major battle immediately and slay this outlaw king with his own blade. Robert senses his hostility, but at that time his army needs to conserve strength and wait for the battle with the English army, so he proposes a duel with Valence alone. Valence readily agrees, but since today happens to be the religious Sabbath according to tradition, no fighting can occur, so they decide to fight tomorrow. That night, Robert and his subordinates camp on the spot, waiting to duel Valence. But at midnight, Valence suddenly launches a sneak attack on them. Fire arrows streak across the sky, and the camp is instantly set ablaze, falling into chaos. Robert barely fends off attacks with a shield while protecting his wife and daughter, and this is merely Valence's first round of attacks. Although Douglas and other generals resist desperately, the rebel army, without a battle formation, is no match for Valence at all. In the emergency, Robert entrusts his wife and daughter to his younger brother, telling them to seek refuge with a trustworthy lord. He draws his long sword, cuts a cavalryman off his horse, and prepares to fight his way out of the encirclement. But before he takes a few steps, the horse under him is brought down by a spear, and he falls into a hard battle again. Although the generals of the rebel army are all brave and skilled in battle, being outnumbered, they still suffer heavy casualties. Seeing the situation is wrong, Angus has someone pull back Robert, who is fighting on the battlefield, and immediately flees in panic with a few elites. The next day, Valence does not find Robert among the corpses scattered everywhere. He is exasperated because he acted without waiting for the English army led by Prince Edward, alerting the enemy, and will more or less be held accountable. Robert, having escaped by the skin of his teeth, now has only 50 soldiers following him. He listens to Angus's suggestion to go to his hometown, Islay, first to settle down and then recruit soldiers. But on the way there, they are blocked by the noble MacDougall. Seeing MacDougall doesn't attack immediately, Robert steps forward to try to persuade him to join. But MacDougall is Comyn's cousin and is very contemptuous of Robert killing his cousin in the church, so it is impossible for him to join. However, he also admires Robert's courage to raise an army and fight. So amidst his hesitation, he makes way for them. A few days later, the group finally arrives opposite Islay. After setting the horses free, they prepare to cross the river in batches using 2 small boats at the ferry crossing. As the king, Robert takes a boat first, while Douglas, his brothers, and others wait in place. What they don't know is that the English army led by Prince Edward has already arrived in Scotland, burning, killing, and looting everywhere to threaten the Scots into handing over Robert's head. MacDougall, forced by helplessness, is also already on the way to hunt down Robert. So when Robert reaches the opposite bank and watches Angus punt the boat back to pick up people, he spots the pursuing troops emerging from the woods from a distance. He quickly rushes into the river and shouts a warning, but even so, The group waiting in place cannot avoid this fierce battle. While Douglas and others resist desperately, Robert anxiously punts a small boat, desperately rushing back. Angus, who had punted over earlier, also returns to the shore. Everyone knows they are no match for the enemy and retreat while fighting. Just as Robert is about to return to the shore, he sees from afar his younger brother's chest being pierced by a spear, and he is instantly filled with grief and indignation. However, the battle does not stop until Douglas spots an opportunity and slits the leading MacDougall's throat, causing the pursuing troops to stop. The surviving rebels quickly board the small boats, and Robert once again escapes in a wretched state. They finally arrive on Islay and find the current Lord Mackinnon. This man fought alongside William Wallace during the last uprising, but at that time, Robert did not send troops to support them because of his father, so Mackinnon holds a grudge and provides them with no help. However, looking at the determined Robert, Mackinnon does not make things difficult for them either. Angus wants to step forward and persuade him, but Robert stops him. He believes Mackinnon will change his mind after some time, then turns and leaves. Eventually, the group returns to the small village where Angus was born, where they are able to rest and recuperate. Prince Edward, having failed to catch Robert, asks around and decides to target his family. He leads troops to find the castle where Elizabeth is hiding, rushes into the city, and captures them. Then he interrogates Robert's brother, trying to find out his whereabouts but gets no answer. They genuinely don't know, because Robert made the plan temporarily after they split up to escape. The interrogation yields no results, making Prince Edward furious. He orders Neil to be hung and subjected to disembowelment and other torture, and ruthlessly slits the old lord's throat. As for Elizabeth and Robert's daughter, he sends them to an English dungeon. Sometime later, the news reaches Islay. Learning that his brother died miserably and his wife and daughter were captured, Robert can no longer sit still and immediately decides to leave. With national hatred and family vengeance, he can no longer care about those elaborate formalities and decides to put down chivalry. A small number has its advantages. He decides to fight a guerrilla war using whatever despicable means necessary. He leads men quietly back to his own castle, which has been occupied, finds a woodcutter he knew from before, and hides in his cart with Douglas and others. Once inside the castle walls, when the time is right, they sneak down, coordinate with those waiting outside to open the city gates, and catch the garrisoned English soldiers completely off guard. To prevent the English from keeping a stronghold for operations, he ruthlessly burns his own castle down. Then Douglas also leads men in disguise to infiltrate the church in his former territory. While the enemy is carelessly listening to the priest's sermon, he takes out a dagger and goes on a killing spree. The continuous campaigning has caused him to gradually form his own manic fighting style, liking to shout his own name while killing people. Robert's disgusting tactics, though not in line with the prevailing chivalry of the time, leave the English army battered and exhausted. Also, by conquering one occupied city after another, the scale of the rebel army gradually expands. The situation of the resistance reaches England, and Edward I is very disappointed in his son. Given that Robert's prestige in Scotland is rising higher and higher, he decides to lead the army himself to suppress it and extinguish this flame of resistance with his own hands. In 1307, Edward I leads the army out, but he is old, and his body, nearing 70 years of age, ultimately cannot withstand the arduous march. He falls ill halfway and dies. Thereafter, Edward II becomes the commander of the English army. Unlike the small force used to hunt Robert before, this time it is a full 3,000 elite iron cavalry, swearing to flatten Scotland. Robert knows he cannot avoid it, and he also knows that the Scottish army at this time is powerless to contend with them in terms of numbers or equipment. He decides to use this land, which the English want to conquer but do not understand. As long as he drags the English army into the swamp and lets the heavy armored cavalry get stuck in the mud, their lightly equipped infantry can utilize their agility advantage to fight them. He leads more than 500 soldiers to start building fortifications. After preparations are complete, he has Douglas take his glove to provoke Edward II and Valence on the English army's path, challenging them to a fight to the death at Loudoun Hill tomorrow. This direct confrontation will have no more hiding. Edward II completely disregards this provocation. He is full of confidence, relying on his 3,000 iron cavalry, believing a single charge can capture the enemy instantly. Robert, in fact, has no confidence in tomorrow's big battle either. He requires his subordinates to defend the built fortifications to the death tomorrow, forcing the English army to spread to the two wings and surround them from the swamps on the left and right sides. For the rest, he can only leave it to fate. Just after laying out the strategy, Lord Mackinnon of Islay comes to pledge allegiance to Robert. Although he only has some 40 men, for Robert it is no different from sending charcoal in snowy weather. Facing Mackinnon's apology for not lending a hand before, Robert does not hold a grudge and thanks him. It seems he had expected this result long ago. Early the next morning, Robert, in old light armor, walks through the ill-equipped army, followed by a tattered and old military flag. but his gaze is firm as he leads the soldiers toward the built fortifications. On the opposite side, the ready-to-go English iron cavalry is like a wall of steel, slowly pushing toward them. Edward II and Valence in the front are well equipped, their momentum monstrous, accompanied by drumbeats, forming a sharp contrast with the shabby rebel army. Edward II rides a horse and starts the pre-battle mobilization. He loudly curses Robert as a murderer who killed in a sanctuary, slanders him saying his next goal is to invade England, and says he must be captured and killed today, provoking a cheer from the soldiers. Robert, however, has no flowery cliches, only sincerely hoping that everyone can fight bravely for their own goals. The oppressed people no longer need encouragement at this moment. Their rage-filled momentum does not lose at all to the 3,000 iron cavalry opposite. With Valence's order, the cavalry begins to launch a charge forward. The sound of horse hooves drowns out the war drums, and a deafening wave sweeps across the entire battlefield. Robert and the others just wait in full battle array in front of the position. They stand in a row, hiding the traps behind them tightly. Just as the cavalry is about to rush in front of their eyes, he gives an order for the soldiers to withdraw behind the trenches, and they all raise their long spears to prevent the enemy from leaping high. When the front cavalry discovers this, it is too late to slow down. Amidst the crowding, they fall into the traps one after another. Although Valence discovers the traps, the cavalry has already slowed down, is deeply surrounded, and is within the range of the archers. Riding on immobile war horses, they become living targets, dragged down and killed by the rebels. Douglas and other generals defend the position to the death. Valence realizes he cannot contend with them in front of the trenches and decides to bypass and surround from the two flanks. His action makes the oblivious Edward II behind him fly into a rage, and the cavalry, just as Robert predicted, sink deep into the swamp and cannot continue to gallop on the battlefield. Moreover, the heavy iron armor on their bodies makes them move slowly, and they are swarmed by the infantry. Amidst the slaughter, Douglas discovers the enemy who once defeated his father on the battlefield. The opponent had also insulted their family name. At this moment, he angrily finds the opponent. Everyone in the rebel army is like Douglas, their murderous spirit shaking the sky. The fully armed Valence is very cautious on his horse, while the oblivious Edward II in the distance impatiently leads troops to charge over. Only when he gets close does he realize that this place is full of swamps and traps. But he is very confident. The morale of the rebel army is greatly boosted, and even the still frail youths kill enemies repeatedly. Valence, who has been observing on his horse, finally realizes the situation is wrong and has to shout for retreat. A single order causes the English cavalry, whose fighting spirit was already beaten down, to throw away their helmets and armor, fleeing this purgatory one after another, leaving their king in the enemy's position. Looking around, Robert sees Edward II, and the two begin a destined duel. The arrogant Edward II is naturally no match for Robert and is knocked to the ground after a few rounds. Robert contemptuously throws down his weapon, watching this English king resist desperately in the mud. Then, when Edward II tries to get up, Robert completely crushes his fighting spirit with a punch, but does not kill him, because keeping this incompetent king alive is actually more beneficial to Scotland, and letting him go back to his military camp in such a wretched state is the greatest humiliation to him. Amidst cheers of victory, Robert wins this miraculous battle. This is an important turning point in the Scottish War of Resistance. Thereafter, Scotland regroups and defeats the English army again at the Battle of Bannockburn 7 years later, dealing England its most disastrous defeat in over 700 years, rendering it unable to launch long-distance expeditions. In 1328, Edward III and Robert signed the Treaty of Edinburgh-Northampton, officially recognizing the independent sovereignty of the Kingdom of Scotland. After the war, the meritorious follower Angus is titled the Lord of the Isles. Douglas also reclaims his family's territory, officially earning the prestigious name the Black Douglas. The captured Elizabeth also regains her freedom through a prisoner exchange and successfully reunites with Robert. It is not until 300 years later that Robert VI inherits the English throne, and the Stuart dynasty begins its rule over the entire territory of Britain. This movie, Outlaw King, has much less dramatic adaptation compared to Braveheart. The plot is relatively serious and plain, but the details are very exquisite. The shots are macro and atmospheric, making it a rare war blockbuster. If you are a history buff or a movie lover who prefers cold weapon warfare, you might want to watch the original film. The commentary cannot present the brilliance of the original film. The various long take shots inside are worth savoring carefully and are quite shocking.